We're going to get started here. Welcome everybody who's streaming in from the chat and the Zoom and all around the world. I hope that you are ready to interact. This is not a webinar, it's an interactive community forum. So we want you to use the chat. As you'll see, people are talking in there. We do want you to turn your camera on. You're going to be muted for now, so you can't talk live vocally for now, but at the end, you'll get a chance to talk. Make sure to only share, don't share confidential information on these forums. And please be respectful, kind, and inclusive of others. And as always, remember, no sales pitches. We want to hear best practices over advertisements. This is the first summit that we've done since FinOps X. We took July off after the conference, and we're coming back. I was almost said September. This is August, to the August virtual summit of the FinOps Foundation. Over the next 60 minutes, oh, and hey, I'm J.R. Storment. I am the executive director of the FinOps Foundation and joining from San Diego, California. Over the next 60 minutes, you will be hearing about the evolution of FinOps and key themes that we're seeing evolve. We're going to hear about Focus, the FinOps Open Cost and Usage Specification. We're going to hear some great talks about Focus adoption from Dhara Kansagara, as well as applying FinOps to GenAI, and as well harnessing AI for FinOps on the other side of that. We are the FinOps Foundation, and the FinOps Foundation is, we're part of the Linux Foundation, and we're a global nonprofit trade association that is now made up of over 25,000 individual people around the world with a mission of advancing the people who manage the value of cloud. That 25,000 number is really exciting because last year when we did this International FinOps Day week, it was only 16,000. We've grown a lot in this last year. All these people come together from all around the world. Please drop your hello in the chat with where you're from as well, as a lot of people are doing. We come together to make connections, first and foremost, between all these practitioners in a community format. We come together to learn through education, training, certification, mentorship, and we come together to share best practices, both in terms of informal learnings and stories like we're going to hear on this summit, and also in terms of specifications like the Focus specification and open source things like the FinOps framework, which is constantly evolving. And there are in-person meetings happening all over the world for the FinOps Foundation. These are all in the last month or so. On the screen, we've got Switzerland, we've got Korea, we've got Sao Paulo, we've got Japan, we've got the nation of Texas. Sorry, inside joke. We've got folks in, I think that's top right is, I want to say Cleveland. Oh man, I'm going to mess it up. The US ones are harder than the international ones for me. We've got Sydney, we've got India, a lot of great conversations happening. All these people globally come together also at our two primary conferences. FinOps X is each year in San Diego. These are photos from last year's, or I say last year, but it was 2 months ago, to the 2024 FinOps X in San Diego. Mark your calendars. We haven't announced the specific dates to keep you all waiting, but the first week of June, 2025, FinOps X back here in San Diego. Mention that because big drop that we're doing today, there'll be a link coming up in the chat here and in Slack shortly. All of the sessions from FinOps X are now available on YouTube. And we've built a really lovely spot that you can go and see not only the 2024 sessions, but also 23 and 22 keynotes, breakouts, all filterable by capabilities and other data. Really cool thing. Thank you, Vic, for dropping that in the chat. Go check that out to see the information. And we're all getting ready. And hey, I see in the chat someone from the Netherlands. We're all getting ready for FinOps X Europe, which is 85 days away, right around the corner, very close. Get your tickets soon and come join the conversation. The FinOps Foundation has a governing board that helps us figure out our strategy and where we're going to invest funds to support the community. This governing board is made up of over 40 folks now who are a mix of cloud practitioners from both big companies and cool kid companies. It's a mix of cloud providers. We've got the top 3 cloud providers on here, and vendor members of the foundation who are folks like consultants and platforms who help support the community as well. So these folks are critical to our success. Thank you for all of your work. And I wanted to give a shout out to a couple key new members who just joined the FinOps Foundation board as premier members of the foundation. If they are online, we're going to let two of them say hi real quick here. It looks like I've got one of them. So wanted to welcome Wallace from SAP as one of our newest and enterprise members and part of the FinOps Foundation governing board. Wallace, can you take 30 seconds and do an introduction to yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, JR. Hello, everyone. I'm Wallace from SAP. I manage the FinOps practice at SAP. SAP is a enterprise software vendor. And as many of you know, that we work with many of the largest enterprise customers in the world. So very glad to be part of the FinOps community, although I have been around for a while, but finally formally able to join the FinOps community as an enterprise member. Thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to work with you.
Thank you, Wallace. Welcome. We're trying a new thing with the timers. Thank you. Next up, we're going to have Dinesh from Workday, who also brand new as a formal governing board member. Welcome, Dinesh.
Hey there, guys. Nice to meet you all. I've been part of the FinOps community for a long time, but glad to be part of the governing board. We would like to contribute what we have been implementing at Workday, what we've learned, what works, what doesn't work, and also understand from you all what works and doesn't work. So really happy to be part of this foundation.
Excellent. Welcome, Dinesh. Beat the timer even. And I think we have, there's the timer. One more. We have Chris Reed.
My name's Chris Reed with the Priceline. So we've joined the FinOps Foundation partly out of necessity, but also out of contribution to the community. Been on our FinOps journey for about 2 years now, and looking forward to continuing that contribution, and then also getting some good analytics and insight from all the people here.
Perfect. Welcome, Chris. Good luck dropping the kids off. And Chris is a fellow San Diegan, so I actually get to see that guy in person once in a while, which is great. All right, so we are going to have introductions to the vendor board members on future sessions where they get to introduce themselves. Like later, we have CloudBolt on this one. So looking forward to hearing from those folks as well. We do one of those per session. Okay, so the evolution of FinOps. This year at the conference, we talked about the key themes that are changing and have changed within the FinOps Foundation community, and we're seeing in space. And I want to revisit those because we're going to see these building at each and every one of our virtual events as well as the in-person events. Now, the Technical Advisory Council that makes up the open source best practice arm of the FinOps Foundation manages the FinOps framework. And this is made up of clouds, practitioners, and vendor members as well, who come together to work on advancements to the framework. And I want to highlight some themes that are coming out of the conversations within these groups and within the conferences themselves. First and foremost, we are seeing that FinOps has moved out of being a siloed organization to really being a part of everyone's job. And as a throwback to the early 2000s, I hope you all remember this background, an email was sent by Bill Gates in 2002. This was well before the cloud. At this point, Amazon was just selling books and Google was just a search engine. And Microsoft CEO Bill Gates sent out a note saying the Trustworthy Computing Initiative, saying basically that security is now everyone's job, that everybody needs to be involved and thinking about it as they go. And we're seeing a similar theme start to happen with cost, where FinOps has become something that not just one team's responsibility, it's everybody in the organization, product engineering teams, finance teams, procurement teams, executive teams, the FinOps practitioners working across all of these different allied personas in the organization as well. So wanted to highlight a new persona we've added to the framework, which is the security persona, because they share a lot of similarities. Centralized team who also pushes out distributed best practices for everybody to work on. And we see security efforts also have cost impacts and vice versa. As part of this as well, being everyone's job, we've seen that a lot of new capabilities are being added to the framework. I'm not going to go through all these on the left. You can go to FinOps.org and look at the framework for these, but they're touching on a lot of the new jobs that everyone has to do. The second theme that we're going to be hearing a lot about in the coming 12 months, and we've heard a lot about at the former conferences, is cost-aware product decisions. This is all about the FinOps capability of architecting for cloud. Historically, when someone was launching a product in cloud, we would see them do all the work to design, develop, launch it, stand up the infrastructure, put it to market, and then the FinOps team would be brought in to control costs, resulting in a lot of lost effort, wasted effort to get things back in line and not leaving a lot of powder dry for future developments because these things were often over budget. Now we're seeing that classic shift left phenomenon where FinOps is coming in early into the process. At the conference, companies shared with me that they were bringing in FinOps before they even decided which products to launch and having the cost conversation with the FinOps team at the point of pitching the products. FinOps is now being brought in early and often through the iterative cycle. So when the product lands, it's closer to budget, hopefully at or near it, and there's more powder saved for future development. The third theme we're going to be seeing a lot in the coming year is moving beyond public cloud. FinOps started very rightfully so in just these public cloud services, the primary hyperscalers. And what we've seen over the last few years is that you have different capabilities in public cloud at different phases. You might have, some of your basic capabilities at the crawl stage. You might move some into a walk stage. You then add some run stage capabilities as you advance your practice, all of this in cloud. What we've seen happen now is organizations saying, well, we've gotten really good at doing this in cloud, allocating, optimizing, forecasting, providing real-time data, creating collaboration between teams. I want you to start doing this for other types of spend. Typically, the first type of spend there that comes in is SaaS. I want you to help me manage, my big Snowflake cost or Databricks cost, or even looking at my Office 365 or my Google Workspaces. I want to start to manage my third-party SaaS vendor costs as I'm managing my cloud. FinOps team is well equipped to do this, already handling the large data volumes. This year, we saw a really interesting surprise where FinOps teams are starting to apply these principles to private cloud, even to on-premises and other types of spend where they're doing more than just capacity management. They're doing active management to reduce future capital expenditure needs and actually doing a higher iterative feedback loop on how to managing these types of hardware and software. So in the FinOps framework, the Technical Advisory Council this year brought in new allied personas, other types of disciplines that are interacting heavily with the FinOps practice. You've got things like ITAM, managing the licenses. You've got ITSM and ITIL, and managing more of the processes. You've got IT financial management, looking across all the different types of spend. These are increasingly being funneled in through a conversation with the FinOps practitioner. And while the FinOps practitioner may not be doing the work of all of these, there's still a lot of specialized ways these disciplines work. They're often seen as a central reporting place for these generalized costs across all the different spend because they've gotten really good at managing the massive data volumes that cloud puts out, and adding other types of spend is easy. At the conference, one of the most interesting talks I think I saw was Meta coming up and saying that they're actually getting heavily involved with the FinOps Foundation and the processes because they want to bring these principles into their private cloud. And that's the trend that we're seeing evolve in the current state of affairs. Huge topic for everybody right now, sustainability and starting to bring in carbon-aware FinOps, carbon and related metrics. I know there's more than just carbon in there. In the state of FinOps data this last year, being 2024, we saw a small number, 11% in North America, 20% in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, already integrating cloud sustainability into their FinOps practices, but an expectation that in the future, those numbers would grow dramatically, 37% in North America, over 59%, almost a super majority there in Europe and beyond. And we're going to see this as a key theme at the FinOps X Barcelona conference with a lot of those European speakers. We actually have the European Parliament who is going to speak in a keynote about their adoption of Focus and how they're integrating a lot of this data in there. And a lot of you have seen this iron triangle. It's in the FinOps book. If you've done any type of project management, they talk about it a lot of those designations and certifications, but it talks about the trade-offs between good, fast, and cheap. With this new world of sustainability, we're seeing folks wanting to do AI, but needing to keep it cheap and also maximizing carbon outputs on the back end. And so we're seeing it critical that these practices be brought into consideration alongside cost and not be a separate conversation. So we can align cost, carbon, good, fast, cheap, all these things in one discipline. So we're seeing sustainability come heavily into the FinOps practice. And all of that ends up with the idea, and look, I'm going to beat my time by 7 seconds, that change is constant. We're on this talk, we're going to hear about AI for FinOps, which CloudBolt, I didn't beat my time after all, we'll talk about toward the end, which is the magic of applying AI for FinOps and making it better. but we're also going to hear a lot about FinOps for AI, which is how do we apply FinOps concepts to make AI better, more effective, more cost efficient, and valuable. And we're seeing a lot of those practices come into the practice as well, with allocation, forecasting, and AI needed for AI itself. Which got me to the last point. I'm going to give all the other speakers a little bit of overrun because I didn't hit mine either. Change is constant. There we go. So with that, I wanted to welcome Stacy Case, VP of Professional Development for the FinOps Foundation, to talk about some of the change in the training world.
Thanks, JR. That timer's giving me anxiety, but that's okay. That's cool. Hey, everyone, I'm really excited to talk to you about the FinOps Certified Professional Training. We announced this at X, and one of the things that we have decided as we've gone through, when we have over 200 people that are already certified professionals, is that this is really the training that we feel everybody that's doing FinOps as a practitioner, if that is your core persona, this is the training and the certification that you should be working toward. It is more advanced. It dives deep into everything. It's giving back to the community. It's a little of something for all of you. And when we looked at that, we're like, how can we streamline things on our side to make this something that's more accessible for everybody? So I don't know if you guys all remember this, but this is an investment, right? So one of the things that we've done is we've reduced the price by almost 50% because we feel it's so important that everybody has access and is able to get the certification. So if you weren't aware, now is the time to go out and register for this training. Start getting that budget approval now for end of year. We're excited to see so many new people jump on and start getting certified as a professional. And I hope all of you will consider doing that too, just to help advance your own career and your own practice within your FinOps Foundation. Not I'm the FinOps Foundation, but your own practice within your organization.
It's the timer, isn't it? It adds.
It's the timer. But listen, I still have a minute and a half. Okay, go to the next slide. I'll get through this. But as we talk about that, I also want to make sure that we always recognize that everybody has the ability, if you cannot afford that investment yourself, for any one of our trainings and certifications, we do have an amazing scholarship program out there. Our goal this year is actually to award over $1 million worth of scholarships. We've done over 600,000 already this year alone. This is impacting people in 66 different countries. Over 800 people have been able to take advantage of this year alone. That's not total. That's just this year in the first 8 months. This is something we're very proud of. Please know that that's out there. If you go to learn.finops.org, you'll find out more about that. And then for those of you that maybe don't need a scholarship, but maybe need a little bit discount, I have something very special for you for this week. This week was International FinOps Day. I don't know if you guys celebrated. I did. I had a cupcake. That was something exciting. But Tuesday was International FinOps Day. We've extended a promotion for this entire week. If you have thought about getting any of our self-paced training, these are greatest hits. This is Practitioner, Engineer, Certified Focus Analyst. It's brand new. FinOps for Containers. If you use the code FinOps Day 2024, you will get 30% off of that training. This is only good until tomorrow. We will not be extending this. So please, if you thought about getting it, this is a great opportunity. So we want to celebrate you and just, so happy that all of you are part of our community. And that's time.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy. Congrats to everybody who's been certified. The foundation is funded via memberships and training. So this is why important both for advancing your career and making sure that we can do all the programs around the world that support this community, like give the $1 million of scholarships that we're doing this year. And the big announcement at FinOps X this year that we're going to continue to hear more about as we advance is FOCUS, the FinOps Open Cost and Usage Specification. The announcement that came at the conference was that we now have native support from all 4 cloud providers, native for the first versions of this, right? It's still early days, still involvement and advancement happening. This is the first stab at this. We're going to learn more, grow the specifications, but you can turn it on at all 4 of the cloud providers today. So as always, want to thank the people involved. The Focus Steering Committee is the group that does the final sign-off and ratification of the releases, which is a critical step to ensure that we follow the right processes and IP reviews are clean, made up of clouds and practitioners. This group, though, extra special, triple handshake, high five, toast. The maintainers, these people meet 5 days a week, every week, and have for 18 months. They work on FOCUS. These meetings are 90-minute meetings every day of the week. They come together, they work hard, They support the community. They debate and argue and fight and finally make decisions that get rolled up into the specification. So please hug your local maintainer and thank them for their work. Hit them up on LinkedIn and give them a shout. They are working on the specifications columns and metrics and definitions and all of the things that make it easier for all of you to understand your spend data. And while Focus looks simple, there are thousands and thousands of hours of conversations and decisions that have rolled up into giving you these simplified columns. We're getting great industry feedback from Forrester and SAP Global, and there was in CIO Dive magazine yesterday. There was a mention of Focus as being a leading initiative to help clarify cloud costs. So definitely help spread the word out there. But we want to hear from the practitioner community, which is what we're all here for, and wanted to welcome Dhara Kansagara from BetaNXT to talk about their use of Focus.
Hi, everyone. This is Dhara Kansagara from Wisconsin. I work with BetaNXT as FinOps analyst. And just to give you an overview, like BetaNXT is into wealth management, and we have 3 business domains, each using different clouds, making it a multi-cloud. I can give you the more challenges on the next slide, please. So as we work on multi-cloud across our 3 domains, we have multi-cloud providers. The providers are AWS and Oracle for now. And due to which we have complex billing structures, which was the reason to adopt Focus so that we can get better budgeting and forecasting for our business domains and for our projects going on, which will help us increase our cost visibility. As currently we lack the visibility across multi-cloud. Due to which we have adopted Focus. Focus in our organization has been adopted as a project for now. And when we adopted Focus, we went through various stages of project. Those stages are presented on the next slide. So this is the stages in which we have divided our implementation of Focus, starting with stage 1 as the initiation stage, which took place in May and June. We started with Oracle Cloud initially and it was post FinOps X in San Diego. We used AWS also. In our implementation plan, during this initiation stage, we did a feasibility study, analyzed what was our challenges for the multi-cloud, what was the scope, and how can we get a single source of truth. We wanted to have a single source of truth. That was the reason for the initiation of Focus implementation. We just went ahead and then prepared the business case with the benefits of the Focus framework and how it can be helpful for our organization, got various approvals. And after that, we started our planning phase in July. During the planning phase, we created a plan, what would be the task, which all teams would be involved, who would be the members involved from each of the teams. And from there, we designed a blueprint for the implementation, which I'll be sharing in my next slide. But that was the design stage, and the planning stage took place. And currently we are in the execution stage, wherein we have enabled the Focus data exports from AWS and Oracle Cloud. We have utilized their links and informations, how we can go ahead and enable those exports. Based on that exports, we have then, as per our design document and solution blueprint, we are doing platform integrations, making sure like we have data connectivity, the data quality has been maintained, and we are taking inputs from the teams so that we get refined reports and dashboards as per their requirement. This stage is supposed to be completed by October, and post that will start our monitoring and controlling stage, wherein we are going to train our internal users on the reports and dashboards built using Focus. And we are going to monitor it. And in case we have any issues or change management process or need fixing, those are the stages which we are going to do. It's a kind of a feedback loop, and it's a continuous process. Once we are done with this stage 1, that would be the closure of the phase 1. Once we are completed with the phase 1, we plan to implement the phase 2, which will include SaaS providers. That's something which is to be part of phase 2. The next slide would give you the architecture diagram for my adoption process for the Focus. So currently, if you see like in the extract stage, we are currently using AWS and Oracle Cloud, from where we are getting a focused data export. That focused data exports are being stored in S3 buckets, and that S3 bucket as a raw data. That raw data is then utilized and transformed with EC2, and we have inbuilt logics and transformation code written in Python, which meets our requirements from the finance team, engineering, product team. Based on that logic, we are then storing one copy of our data in S3 bucket and pushing the other data to the Snowflake, wherein we are designing the schema. And based on that schema, we are then integrating it the visualization layer, which is the Microsoft Power BI in our case. On top of that, we have built an internal application, which is a simulation application. This application basically gives us an overview of AWS Oracle Cloud comparison, so that our product team can utilize this particular application to define their workloads, where their workload should sit based on the costing which we get from AWS and Oracle Cloud. The next slide would give us what advantages we are seeing currently in our focus implementation. So these are the 5 areas in which we currently see the advantages: user accountability, optimization, operations of finance, compliance, and sustainability. With implementation of focus, the challenges which we saw on the first slide, we are able to overcome those. And currently in the execution phase itself, with our POC, which is currently in process, we are able to do a proper budgeting and forecasting based on it, which is giving us cost visibility across the accounts at business domains. With this, having a single source of truth, it is making very convenient for our asset management team to do the auditing, which is also helping us to plan our optimizations and long-term savings based on the application costings and budgeting and forecasting and our simulation app. This is the current advantages which we are seeing, but more advantages once we are done with the implementation process. And the next stage is the next slide gives you an overview of how I went ahead and implemented Focus Dashboard in my organization. So currently, this is an overview of AWS Dashboard for Focus. I implemented it in 2 stages. First was the enabling the focus data export. Within that focus data export, there are links and resources which I have shared on the slide, which was utilized to enable the data export. Once the data export was been enabled, then there was a deployment of focus dashboard done using the Terraform codes. Again, the information is available on the resources of AWS and the workshop links on their YouTube channels. Over to JR for.
Perfect. Thank you, Dhara. I really appreciate it. There are a couple questions for you in the chat that we're going to save for at the end. And folks, if you have questions for me or any of the presenters as we go through, please keep dropping those in the chat. We'll collect those and answer them toward the end if they don't get answered in the chat. So Dhara showed an example of one implementation of this. There are lots of different ways to do it. This was an example that GitLab used on their implementation. There's another example that Zoom used on their implementation from the conference. Some use AWS, some use Google, some use Microsoft, some use all 3. It's really up to you. I expect we'll see a lot of these start to come out in the coming year. We'll collect different architectural examples of how to use Focus. With that, we had a big launch this morning. By this morning, classic FinOps Foundation timing. This went live about an hour before the summit, and I wanted to pass to Stephen Trask and our team to share more about the new website and resources that just went up.
Hey everyone, I feel like I'm slightly getting away with no timer today as I'm running the timer.
Let me start the timer for you.
It's really good to see you all. As JR mentioned, we just launched a significant update to the Focus website, which can be found at focus.finops.org. The central element to this is providing actionable steps for you, for your cloud provider to enable you to start using that Focus data. It's wonderful to hear how people are already using Focus in their FinOps practice, but we want to support more by taking that initial steps with these Focus resources and kind of like guides. We have across the cloud providers. In addition to this, to help, there are focus use cases. These have been contributed to provide real-life templates for you to use on your data. These actually show like the SQL queries and also the related focus columns. You can easily kind of look into the details of these columns within the column library itself or directly from the use case. So this is kind of an example of kind of like you can dig into the description, the ID, the display name. And then another significant update. Finally, there's a support and feedback page where you can find answers to your questions, submit new use cases by joining the Focus user group, submitting feedback directly to the team via the web form. But please let us know your adoption stories. The community really wants to hear how people are using Focus in their practice. And then last of all, I just want to say thank you to Sam Benson, James, Amber, and Rob for kind of really making this happen in such a short time and getting this live today. But we're looking forward to your feedback from you enabling your focus data. Back to you, JR.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve and team, for the work on that new website and resources. Can you all see my screen again now that I took it back? Yep, perfect. So at FinOps X San Diego, there was a 1.0 focus launch. The group is working toward a 1.1 iterative launch, which goes a bit deeper. And one of the pieces that's come back in conversations is that we are looking for more feedback from the users and the practitioner community. So I wanted to welcome one of our key maintainers, Shawn Alpay, to talk about the focus user group. Hey, Shawn.
Hello. Hi there.
Over to you.
So my name is Shawn Alpay. I'm a business intelligence architect with a vendor called Envisor. We brought in data from AWS, GCP, and Azure in the focus format. And I'm also a focus maintainer. So if I look about 10 years older than that picture, it's either because I spend 90 minutes a day in those focus meetings that JR mentioned, or it's because we just had an 8-month-old baby. Next slide, please. So I'm here to talk to you about the focus user group. What is it? Why are we standing it up? What we're looking for and how you can get involved. So I'm going to talk about those first two squares at the top first. On the right, we have the FinOps Foundation, the group you all know and love. These are the folks who are responsible for collecting FinOps use cases from you all and driving adoption of Focus and providing training for Focus and making sure that we're talking in Focus terms. On the left, the Focus project, of which I'm a part, we're the ones designing and maintaining the spec. We're the ones actually executing on those use cases, making sure the data tells the story of those use cases. And we're operating under an org level member contract to protect IP for legal reasons. So with those two groups, they've existed for a while, but there's a missing piece, which is where's the group who's actually providing the use cases? And that's been, I would say a missing piece. So we've decided to formalize what's been maybe more of an informal process up until this point and create a group that actually exists and meets regularly and has a forum to interact with these other bodies. So next slide, I'll tell you about what we're looking for, kinds of folks we're looking for and what the group will be doing. So who are we looking for? Practitioners and vendors with diverse service usage and using a variety of FinOps strategies and discounting mechanisms like allocation and tagging. I feel strongly about this. We're looking for people who are both very data savvy, but then other folks who are maybe not so data savvy, people who are using a lot of data, maybe some other people who are using not so much data, multi-cloud, single cloud. I think a variety of viewpoints is going to make for the most robust possible specification. So making sure we're handling for Fortune 50 companies and people who are just getting started with their FinOps journey, everything in between. So really looking for a variety of viewpoints there. Most importantly, having a desire to share your use cases and requirements. What are you doing with FinOps data today? How are you telling that story in your organization? And what do you need to be able to do? Your use or evaluation of focus data sets. Are you touching and feeling the focus exports today? And then, of course, opinions. I have a lot of very strong opinions. Some of my peers may say annoying opinions. We really want you to have opinions and bring them into this forum. So what's the group going to do? You're going to provide use cases to the Focus project team and help influence the specification. You'll answer specific questions from project members like myself about your requirements and about how the rubber meets the road and how you're using that data. You'll provide feedback on your use of Focus data sets, both current data sets and future versions we're working on. And you'll enumerate for us your issues, what you want to see changed in the roadmap, conformance compliance questions, et cetera, et cetera. So next slide. So how do you get involved in Focus? So if you're curious about Focus, that first box, turn on your Focus data exports for your usage. They're available today for these major cloud service providers. You can take the Intro to Focus course. It's free. That's awesome. Get your feet wet. Start to understand how Focus works. There's a really great resource, the Chat Focus channel in the F2 Slack, where you can ask a question. You can understand how other people are using Focus data today. Of course, there's many community calls and events. And as the team has said, the Focus website was just revamped this morning. If you want to start using Focus, join that Focus user group. I'd love to have you involved. There's a Slack, of course. There'll be email, weekly meetings. You'll be interacting with the project team members such as myself. Of course, community calls and events. You'll be providing those requirements as we talked about. And there's a Focus Analyst course, which is will help you further your Focus journey on top of the Intro to Focus course. And then I can make Focus better. So that's how I got involved. I felt like I could help influence the specification. If you get to the Focus user group and you want to keep going, then join the Focus project. Become a member such as myself. Sign the contributor license agreement for your org and individually. Of course, you'll participate in that chat Focus channel. You'd be participating in member meetings and work, task force meetings and work. And you'd be helping provide requirements alongside the user group, but then designing and developing and validating the solution that we're building. So those are all the pieces and parts of how you can get involved. We'd love you to participate in the user group. And of course, ping me if you have any questions. Thank you. Back to JR.
Thank you, Shawn. Perfect. So we talked about a lot of these different themes at the beginning of this, and we're going to hear more of them at X Europe in Barcelona, and you'll see a lot of these on the previous talks. I wanted to double click on this summit on a very important and emerging topic of FinOps for AI, and welcome two folks who shared a longer version of a deep dive here, but want to highlight some expertise from Jason from Intuit, who also happens to live in San Diego. This is like a lot of San Diego representation this time around. And Josh from Grammarly. Welcome, Jason and Josh, to talk about applying FinOps to GenAI.
Hey, everybody. Josh,
hey, everyone.
There?
I am now. Thanks, JR. So as they mentioned, this is going to be a condensed version of what we presented at FinOps X. And some of the feedback that we had received was that some of the content was a bit deep, and that a lot of practitioners are really looking for ways to get started in AI. So we wanted to, in this version, focus more on that. And the applying FinOps piece to this session is that is really focused on the generative AI API platforms. So this is AWS Bedrock, your Azure AI, where you're using generative AI by hitting these APIs, and we'll touch on some of those topics as well. So to kind of understand how to get started, I wanted to use myself as an example, because up until about a year ago, my day-to-day and things I was doing in FinOps was, I would assume, much like what you all are doing. And prior to Grammarly, I had no direct experience with AI. So I joined Grammarly 2 years ago. So the first probably 8 months of my time at Grammarly, I was reporting on training and inference costs, because that's most of what our costs are. And that was really my first kind of part of my journey, is just understanding what those are, so I can better understand on how to report on them. Next, like a lot of companies, we were having issues getting the GPUs we needed. So I started working with our public cloud vendor, alongside our researchers and engineers, to understand how we're using the GPUs and try to adapt to that shortage. So really the goal was to, how do we get the capacity our teams need without wasting too much money? And then about 8 or just under a year into my time at Grammarly, and about a year and a half ago, I started hearing about these new features we plan on releasing using generative AI. And we were going to use, for some of those, we were going to be using a generative AI API platform. And I knew this was a new cloud service, and I essentially inserted myself into this process. I thought it was very interesting. The dynamics are seemingly very different, and obviously it was a new challenge. But and how I did that was just understanding, first off, who's kind of leading the efforts here, who are the teams that are building these features, and the better I understood what they were doing, understand the use cases, then understanding from the vendors how all these things work, I quickly found my place in trying to help, and that was in managing this capacity. First piece of advice in getting started is if your GenAI or if your company is using generative AI in any way, especially with these platforms, and you're not involved yet, just kind of be curious, start asking questions, attend vendor meetings if you need to, but just essentially insert yourself, and real quick, you're going to find opportunities to help. So that's probably the best first step, I would say. Now, in my time in managing this, I obviously picked up on some best practices, and I wanted to share just really an overview of what your options are if you are currently trying to figure out how do I manage this generative AI, these APIs. It seems a lot, and I would say it seems a lot more complicated and different from other cloud services than it really is. So we can jump to the next slide. So when we're talking about really any of these platforms, you're going to have two capacity options. You have shared capacity, which is much like the other cloud resources your company's using now. You only pay for what you use. There's no commitment. The big difference with shared capacity is that performance can be inconsistent. It is shared with other customers of that vendor. So maybe during off hours, you have very low latency, but then at peak hours, you're looking at much higher latency. And I would say most of the time when you are running a production service, especially something that's streaming to your end customer, you want consistent and low latency. So that's probably not the best fit for all production services. The other side of that is provision capacity, where you actually are paying upfront for a block, essentially, of GPUs. You don't see any of the details of that cluster. All you know is you have a certain amount of throughput, or also called tokens per unit. And Jason has an opinion on tokens. Watch the video. We won't have time to go over that today. But you'll have a fixed amount of throughput for each capacity unit that the vendor will help you understand or you have to load test for. And then you also have your availability of this capacity is absolutely guaranteed. So you do have that, and performance is going to be much better. So this is where your production services, for the most part, should live, is within this provision capacity. And for the most part, if these services are going to be going with peak hours of working hours, like going way down during off hours, like nights and weekends, and up during the day, then the provision capacity is not going to save you money. In fact, it's going to have a high cost because you're going to have low utilization. So my suggestion here, and I think more vendors are going to probably make this a bit easier to do down the line, but right now is setting up a blend of these capacities. By setting it up to say, okay, if this service hits dedicated capacity and it's not available, automatically retry on shared capacity. That's called chaining the capacities together. By doing that, it will require you to have less provision capacity, lower those costs, and then also at peak times, just use enough share capacity to just cover a certain percentage of requests, maybe 30% at peak. And you have to be comfortable with that, obviously. But in any way you can blend these capacities, you can essentially get the best of both worlds, and a lot of times save up to 30% as compared to even the on-demand rates. There's a lot deeper detail into this in the session, so I do suggest watching the full video. But from here, I'll leave it to Jason to go over comparing the value of LLMs.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, we can go to the next slide here. And just for everybody, there is going to be a quiz on this at the end, so play close attention. Just kidding. No, this is actually a slide that's there's an AI working group within the FinOps Foundation, and this is part of some content in a paper that's they've worked on. But the point is, here again, like Josh was saying at the beginning, we heard the feedback that a lot of the talks on AI were very sort of intimidating and overwhelming at FinOps X. And the takeaway I want to make sure you all have is that regardless of sort of like, FinOps is a fairly kind of big landscape, right? Like there's part of it, maybe you're dealing with your accounting group or your finance group. Part of it, you might be interfacing with engineers or senior leadership. You're kind of at the crossroads of lots of different functions, and there's definitely a technical component to applying FinOps to AI. But the thing you should know is that you aren't necessarily going to be the one who has to solve all of these things, and the sort of new technical challenges of making sure that your organization is coming away with optimal economics in their use of these generative AI services. It's new, but it's also not new. So if we look at like things that have been around a long time, like compute or storage or databases or networking, like these are technologies that have been around a long, long time, like basically from the beginning in the public cloud. And there's well sort of understood processes by which engineering teams go through, experiments and testing to figure out what's the right sort of compute to use for my workload. Or I've got like in Amazon, should I be using RDS or Aurora or Redshift or Dynamo? Like you've got different database options, and which one is the right one for my workload? There's a process by which you sort of figure that out. And so with AI, here this slide is talking about choosing the right models and things for your workload, but it's kind of a new thing. Like again, like before there was compute and storage and database and networking. Now it's just compute and storage and database and networking and AI. Just think of it as like another sort of flavor of technology that the engineering type folks working together with people who can provide an economic perspective are going to have to figure out. But there's nothing like if you're somebody who's been in the trenches with the engineers and have helped and worked with them to figure out what the sort of price performance curve looks like for different sort of setups, like you might be the right person to be doing that here for GenAI. But if that's something you haven't done before, where there's maybe some other person or team within your organization that sort of conducted those exercises, then those are going to be the people you're going to need to look to lean on when it comes to optimizing GenAI, because those sort of skill sets and the experience that those people have from having done those exercises is totally applicable here. Again, there's some new words and phrases, but the principles of how we go through a process of optimizing our use of this technology, for economics and performance and reliability and everything else, those principles are the same. So anyway, that's the takeaway from this one. And we can go to the next one now. And yeah, again, so just, again, it doesn't have to be scary. I know there's lots of new words being thrown around, and tokens are sort of a big confusing thing in the mix that hopefully, I don't know, maybe the focus group or somebody can work to eradicate that, because it's just making things harder for everybody. But just like I said, like seek help. So if you're not the person who did the technical things, whether it was capacity management and planning like Josh was talking about, or optimizations, find the folks in your org that can help you make that happen for GenAI. And again, like the principles, again, like I said, when it comes to optimization, but also things like unit economics, allocations, like all of those things are still totally applicable, right? This is generally a shared use thing inside the organization. You're going to want to make sure that the sort of groups that are consuming it have like good line of sight into sort of the true cost of using these services. And that, like, again, that part isn't any different. So yeah, don't be intimidated. You can do it. But you may just need to get some help if getting like that deep in the technology isn't something you've had to do before. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Extra time. Nice.
Yeah.
Wow, excellent. And I saw some folks doing some hand raises. We will be opening up for questions after all the content at the end, and hoping the speakers can stick around to have conversations and ask questions of them at that point. Yeah, thank you, Jason and Josh. Great to see that content. A lot of folks were, I think, yeah, intimidated and impressed by how deep some of this has gone. The FinOps for AI working group is also now working on sort of the intro to things you need to know about how to start your FinOps journey on AI. As they mentioned, as another set of services, another set of compute, database, AI on that. So watch for those coming in the coming months. I mentioned before, the foundation has both membership and training as the funding sources for how it helps enable all the work that it does. I want to give a thank you to all of our premier vendor members as well. This is a growing list of organizations, clouds, practitioner end users. You heard from a few of those at the beginning, vendors and consultancies and GSIs who help with implementation of the FinOps capabilities. These folks are all not only financially supporting the foundation, but we require the people they bring in and contribute to be real thought leaders on the product engineering, services side of these organizations to help share knowledge as part of that process. And so we're going to hear from a great example of that every summit, we feature one of those people. And why don't you welcome Kyle Campos from CloudBolt, who has a fantastic background as an engineering leader, as a practitioner, who's now at CloudBolt, helping their customers in their journey to talk about AI for FinOps, the other side of the coin from FinOps for AI. Over to you, Kyle.
Thanks, JR. Good to be with y'all. Long-time practitioner, FinOps team leader, first-time caller here on the summit. So excited to be with y'all and talking on this topic. So we can get into the next slide here. Very timer aware for me. So yeah, the first slide here, kind of talking about what the promise of AI for FinOps is and how we expect it to be able to help us. There's kind of three areas that I focus in on. One is to broaden the engagement and impact. So we talk about it in this community a lot around how FinOps is everyone's job. We're adding personas. That is all great, but we're also adding in a lot of sophistication as we mature up our own FinOps practices, et cetera. A lot of sophistication is entering our systems. And so that kind of has a tension that it's pushing back on that by driving specialization into our FinOps platforms, right? And so personas start narrowing as far as who can get direct value and engagement on it. So some of the promise for AI here in natural language and conversational is to help disrupt that sort of paradigm, right? And bring and invite in more personas that can interact with complexity under the hood that doesn't get exposed to them, and they can get data and insights and generate charts, et cetera, very, very quickly. So that's one area of promise here. Second is keeping FinOps high leverage. So since FinOps is a horizontal function in businesses, the business expectation for all horizontal functions is that they are high leverage, that they're many to one impact. So the promise here is equipping FinOps teams with powerful capabilities that expand the scope and degree of impact beyond direct human effort. The last one here is around the sort of business impact of elevating cloud ROI via organizational velocity. So I have an image coming up next that kind of describes this impact, but lead time in all software contexts is a value killer and risk elevator. So what we encourage in our practice is to measure lead time, do that value stream map of from the beginning to end. This is borrowing DevOps systems thinking's pattern. Know where your lead time is and attack it. So on the next slide is kind of a model of how this works out. And this is from some of the customers we work with and work through this value stream map is, all right, how many humans do you got and how often is your sort of optimization process? So what does that optimization process actually look like? What is your lead time to those insights? What is your lead time and human effort around evaluating those insights? Then provisioning work to actually execute on any recommendations or actions to address that waste. Very often, people have monthly cycles, quarterly cycles, as you get into larger enterprise processes. And all that lead time stacks up, not just in infrastructure waste, but in human direct effort that we want to be able to lean in on AI to handle continuously. So this is just the sort of the cost of not leaning into AI for FinOps. If we go to the next slide here, there certainly are some pitfalls here, though, to be aware of, and to piggyback on the previous talk. This isn't meant to induce panic or fear, but it is to introduce a heavy dose of pragmatism here, right? So you want to avoid AI. For AI's sake, you don't need it to compute mean CPU load time over the last 30 days, as an example. But you may need it to compute anomaly signals spanning observability data, infrastructure event data, custom metrics, and then doing predictive modeling against it. those use cases start to make more sense, right? So, and it is, AI here is powerful. It's not magical. It's not fairy dust you can sprinkle everywhere. Productizing AI internally or externally is one of the most difficult things to do. It is very easy to get lost in complexity and buried in cost. So heavy dose of pragmatism there. The data integrity is paramount. Get the data platform right. So I was glad to see some of the sharing around that focus execution and how that was getting implemented. That helps advance this cause a lot. That the quality of your data platform is going to determine your velocity, your resilience to change, precision levels. And ultimately, if you think about the end impact, it's the critical targeting system of effort for your business. So you can't really afford to get that wrong. But along the way, since I lead engineering teams and I come from an ops background, I would encourage a little bit of what I always tell my ops teams when we're in the middle of incidents, which is, don't worry, you can always make things worse. So take a breath and let's be sure about what we're going to do next. So as you get into production, have a heavy dose of pragmatism. The quick demos are usually impressive, hard to scale. Make sure that you have the sort of operational prowess to scale that as you pull more users into your systems. If we go to the next slide here, I'm gonna pick up the pace to get to this next one in 30 seconds. So I won't talk through these bullets here, but cloud ROI first was obfuscated because it was hard to get data. I think the effort from this community, CSPs, focus group, vendor ecosystem, et cetera, we've moved that problem largely off the table. Now we have access to all the data, and the normalization burden obviously decreasing through focus. But now the primary burden is that data volume, enriching it with business context, all the lead time to meaningful insights, the human cost to analyze, intersect that with relevance for action and impact. That's a lot. And as Jared was mentioning, this is always changing. So be laser focused on the business impact where the human effort is most helpful, efficient, and necessary, and be very aware of the complexity curves as you scale up here. It's not linear at all. Next slide, 30 seconds on here. This is always been a helpful slide for me to describe where it applies. So in the inform cycle, descriptive and diagnostic around what's happened in the data, why did it happen? Then in predictive and prescriptive modes, what's likely to happen and what should we be doing? Overly simplistic models are dangerous. Overly complex are also. So gauge where you use this to move the business forward pragmatically. And I will stop right on that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle. I feel like we should everybody go out a little dance to that, or you're walking off music. Yeah, you can find Kyle there and also in our Slack. And next month, we are going to, and stay on the call here now because we're about to go into discussion. We've got a lot more coming, but I want to let you know for next month, the September Summit is going to dive, this one is FinOps for AI. We're going to dive into FinOps beyond public cloud. That critical topic of how FinOps is expanding into SaaS, into private cloud, into all those other areas. And the way that we build out the best practices and work through each of these topics in between all of these summits is through our working groups in the community, which we encourage you to follow along. And if you have time and expertise in the area, to potentially get involved. I want to pass to Samantha White from our team to talk about what's coming out of those right now, what's coming up.
Thanks, JR. Just wanted to highlight a couple new working group assets that were recently published. The AI working group released their second piece of work illuminating the financial considerations that accompany various AI workload deployment models. There's also recently a new tools and services paper describing the process for and the considerations that folks need to give during a tools and services selection process. And then also the Adopting FinOps guidance was recently refreshed to emphasize which areas of the FinOps framework those who are early on in their FinOps adoption journey should consider directing their attention towards first. And so in addition to all of these items that were recently released, there's a number of efforts underway from working groups and special interest groups to create new pieces of content. The ITAM, Sustainability and Public Sector SIGs all have content developing related to their interest area. There's additional content being developed in the area of adopting FinOps with a specific concentration on adopting focus, and also how planning, estimating, forecasting, and budgeting capabilities relate to one another. The AI working group, as well as our newest initiative, FinOps Beyond Public Cloud, are accepting applications for participation, as is the focus user group, which you heard Shawn speak about earlier. So stay tuned for more content from these groups. And if you're interested in joining any of these efforts, head on over to the website to apply.
Thank you, Sam. And if you want to have more conversations, we're about to do a big group conversation here for the last 30 minutes, but if you want to join calls throughout the month, these are happening once, twice, 3 times a week, probably. We do have topical calls as well. They're time zone and region specific, but you can join anyone you want. So if you look at events.finops.org or this address here, you'll see, for example, the upcoming UK community call is focused on Beyond Public Cloud, and another one might be focused on FinOps for AI. So go look at these. And this is for you folks who've been around for a long time. These calls are kind of like the FinOps Foundation calls back in 2020. You get 20 or 15 or 12 people together having conversations at a deeper level around deep topics. A great way to go deeper with your peers, make new friends. And before we get into the conversation, wanted to say thank you to my and our primary team, this group who works together, the FinOps Foundation staff. We all work for the Linux Foundation and put on all the activities, events, community, training, best practices, and support all of you in this. 2 big shout outs. First is to Hashim, who runs the summit program and does a ton of work each month to put all this together. Thank you, Suha, for all your efforts in making this so great each month. And then a welcome, who you're going to meet next time. Dean Oliver, longtime community member since 2020, has joined the FinOps Foundation full-time as our UK community director. Dean will be making an announcement shortly and will join us on the next summit to talk about his focus area, which is going to be Beyond Public Cloud in a timely fashion. So welcome to Dean. We'll hear more from him next time around. And of course, the next chance we get to see you all in person is FinOps X Barcelona. There are still tickets available. They are going to go fast on this one because it's a smaller venue than in San Diego. Still 3 days of content or 2.5 days of content. Same format, same sort of structure of the conference, but more intimate and with more time for networking. Beautiful venue right next to the ocean in Barcelona, and really good opportunities for chalk talk discussions and learning from breakouts and keynotes and all those things. So definitely consider getting out to this. You can as well.
Thank you for watching. We hope to see you during our next virtual summit. In the meantime, check out previous summits or the rest of our YouTube channel. We appreciate the support.